I'd like to call this meeting to order, a meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, February 14th at 6:30 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom. Also can be joined via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statute sections 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for discussion and action. Roll call shows all commissioners present except for Mr. Kimmler, who is excused. At this time, if there's anyone in our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in public input or public appearance, now would be the time to do so. If you are here to give any comments to the public hearing that's listed under new business item A, I would wish that you would wait until that comes up on our agenda to do so. But if you want to bring anything else before this body in regards to public input or public appearance, you're welcome to do so now. All I would ask is you state your name and your address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to come forward? All right, then we can go on to the next item, which is the approval of minutes from the January 10th, 2022 Plan Commission meeting.
Move approval as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to new business, starting with new business item A. Grant Moore, agent for Moore Designs, Inc., and MD Development, LLC, property owner located at W193 North 10980 Kleinman Drive, and Christopher West, agent for Pace Property Management, LLC, property owner located at North 112 West 19225 Mequon Road, a land use plan map amendment from agricultural conservation residential to industrial office, a rezoning from B5 highway business to M1 limited industrial district, and a 2-lot certified survey map. And that's on tonight's agenda for public hearing and board commission action. To give us more background and information on this new business item, I'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, essentially, all three of the applications tonight are necessary to accommodate the transfer of 6.5 acres approximately from one property owner to another. The two properties together are located north of Kleinman Drive and south of Mequon Road, as shown in the red highlighted area. The first application that we have is an amendment to the 2020 land use plan map to change the agricultural conservation designation to industrial office. And along with that, a proposed rezoning to go from B5 highway business to M1 limited industrial. The existing parcels are shown on the screen. The existing Pace property management property on the north is approximately 6.4 acres in size. And the MD development property is just over 8 acres in size. And the intention is to transfer, if you will, 6.5 acres right in the middle from the property to the south to the property to the north. That proposed CSM would move the Pace property management up to 12.9 acres, again, an addition of 6.5 acres, and the MD development parcel would be reduced to 1.7 acres. In the midst of all of the properties is the significantly large wetland area, as highlighted in green. But as you can see here, the overall intention is to essentially transfer the buildable portion of the property from the MD development parcel to the Pace management property to the north. And the purpose for doing so is for Pace property management to expand an existing gravel parking lot to accommodate additional trailer parking for their business operation. On the property, they currently have a CDL testing operation and also a trailer leasing and storage operation on the property. Got an aerial photo that shows, this is from the north looking toward the south. In the foreground is the Pace Management property. In the area highlighted in red is that area where the proposed parking lot, a gravel parking lot expansion is ultimately proposed to be installed. And as you can see, the surrounding property is heavily wooded, environmental corridor. And again, with the exception of the area that's not in green, everything else is part of that environmental corridor around the property. The staff recommendation is to approve the proposed 2020 land use plan map amendment to change 6.5 acres to be attached to the Pace property management parcel from agricultural conservation residential to industrial office. On the rezoning, to approve the rezoning of 6.5 acres from B5 highway business on the MD property to the M1 limited industrial to match the zoning on the Pace management property, subject to one condition, and to recommend approval of the certified survey map to relocate the common property line and transfer 6.5 acres from the MD development parcel to the Pace management parcel, subject to two conditions. And because of the land use plan map amendment and the rezoning, those items are subject to a public hearing this evening. And we do have representatives for both property owners here this evening.
Okay. Good. Okay. Then we would open this public hearing by hereby stating a notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Village of Germantown Plan Commission at the Germantown Village Hall located on Mequon Road in Germantown and virtually through the WebEx platform on Monday, February 14th at 6:30 p.m. or later. The purpose of said hearing is to hear any and all parties, their attorneys or agents for or against the following applications for a 2020 land use plan amendment to change the classification from agricultural conservation residential to industrial office, rezoning a portion of the subject property from the B5 highway business to the M1 limited industrial zoning district pursuant to section 17.32 of the village zoning code, and a two-lot certified survey map to divide the subject property described below. The applicant is Grant Moore, agent for MD Development LLC and Pace Property Management LLC, which are the property owners, and the properties are located at W193 North 10980 Kleinman Drive and at North 112 West 19225 Mequon Road. Is there anyone that wishes to come forward at this time, either within our audience or joining us WebEx, to speak for or against the land use plan map amendment, the rezoning, or the certified survey map? But usually the first two are for public hearing. So is there anyone that would like to come forward to speak for or against? Yes, sir. I need you to come to the podium though, please, because there are people watching and that way they can hear you. If you could speak directly also into the microphone, that'll be helpful for those that are watching at home.
Can do. David Moore, I'm the owner of the property, MD Development. This is a property that is really not useful to us, and we want to divide it and sell it to somebody that can use it. That is the intent here. We understand there's a zoning change to accommodate that for Mr. West's parking lot, but obviously we're for it as being the property owner that's applying for the division.
Okay. Thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else at this time that would like to come forward to speak for or against the land use plan map amendment or the rezoning? Anyone else wishing to come forward to speak for or against? One last time, is there anyone wishing to come forward to speak for or against the land use plan map amendment or the rezoning? Then this public hearing is now closed. Commissioners,
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed 2020 land use plan as presented.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Straightforward. No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
Make a motion to approve the rezoning of 6.5 acres, areas to be attached to the Pace property as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Question. Are we going to come forward still with a site plan for that, that parking lot? And will we also be looking at any type of 25-foot encroachment into wetland setback or anything like that?
One of the conditions of the certified survey map, actually it's in the rezoning, that reads, prior to any filling, grading, or change of use of the 6.5 acre area attached to the Pace property management parcel, a detailed site plan indicating both pre and post construction grading, erosion control, and stormwater management to the extent required, given the amount of area to be filled, used for trailer parking, shall be submitted to the village for review and approval.
Okay.
At this point, it may very well be that we can handle it at a staff level with a zoning permit, subject to the grading and the erosion control that our engineer would review, and wouldn't rise to the level of really needing the plan commission to review it. I mean, the intention, if you look at the graphic, is to fill and regrade a small area for gravel parking.
And it's not impervious?
Technically, it is for stormwater management purposes. It's more impervious for that than anything else, but it doesn't trigger any sort of exceedance of the allowance for impervious area on the site. It's not proposed at this point to intrude into the 25-foot setback area, which you can sort of see just outside of the green area. That line is shown there as well. So if we can handle it at a staff level, my intention is that we would do it that way, unless the planning commission really wants to see a site plan for this in this particular location. Again, it's in a secluded area. You can barely see the existing gravel parking area to begin with, where in this picture, most of the trailers are sitting on anyway.
Okay. All right. Further discussion? Mr. Leszewski?
Was that site already disturbed or graded, like, looks like it could have been years ago? Just by the picture here, given the vegetation seems to be of the same age and.
Frankly, it could be, but
Not that it matters, I was just curious.
if you look at the wetland delineation, it has one of those characteristics of an area that, may have been filled many, many years ago, and it
Yeah.
slowly is moved out into the wetland area. But frankly, there's no way of telling, and there's nothing that would preclude it at this point from being used or developed, because it is outside of the wetland in the area. There is a navigable stream. When you look at the photograph, the navigable stream sort of runs diagonally through here. So I don't know to what extent that might have gone, the wetland area associated with that might have gone further west, but.
Okay. Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion to approve the proposed 2-lot certified survey map as presented with the 2 conditions.
Motion made and seconded to approve the certified survey map. Is there any discussion on that motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you for being here. As we wait to see your transcript, President Trump.
Next item under new business is item B, Guy Jacoby, agent for Detail Woodworks, and Husheng M. Kadim, property owner located at North 114, West 18775, Clinton Drive, a sign review application. Give us more information and background on this new business item. We'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. I would just ask if you're on WebEx, if you could just verify that your microphone is muted, or that you're muted on WebEx, that would help us in the room here. So Detail Woodworks is proposing 2 wall signs for the property at N114W1887775 Clinton Drive. This property is located in the southeast corner of the Clinton Drive and Maple Road intersection. In the Village Industrial Park. So there are 2 wall signs, 70 square feet each. They're non-illuminated Illumilite signs with vinyl lettering. They'll be mounted flush to the west and the south walls. This is the west wall and then the south wall. Just for your information, there's an identical ground sign approved as a face replacement administratively in January. So that was done as a face replacement, which we do administratively. So these signs are identical to that ground sign replacement. So staff recommends approval of the Detail Woodworks wall signs to be located at N114 W18775 Clinton Drive as proposed.
Commissioners,
Make a motion to approve the wall signs for Detail Woodworks as presented.
motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next item under new business is item C, Holy Hill Road Improvement Project for street lighting, and it is on the agenda tonight for discussion. To start our discussion and give us information on this new business item, again, we'll turn the meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzlaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given that the Holy Hill Road reconstruction project is moving forward now at a fast pace, I thought it would be helpful to provide some information to the Plan Commission, basic information about the project itself, as well as, and maybe more importantly, the lighting, since this is it's kind of a new project for the village. If you really think about it, at least as long as I've been here, it's the first time that we've widened a rural 2-lane road in what arguably still is to some degree a rural area part of the village. And as part of that, introducing street lighting. And while one might argue, well, it's a highway and it's intended to be have a lot of traffic and possibly lit up over time, it is relatively a new thing for the village that I think it's worth discussing, at least at this point, getting some information and hopefully providing feedback for future projects if necessary. The Holy Hill Road reconstruction project is intended to be, and I think it's either gone out for bid last Friday or is early this week, with construction intended to be started in the spring and completed in the fall of 2022. The project goes from the US 41 interchange on the west to the Goldendale Road intersection on the east. In fact, it's going to extend approximately 500 feet further east of the Goldendale Road intersection to accommodate a taper from the 4-lane divided to a 2-lane rural cross section. The conversion or reconstruction is to a 4-lane urban divided cross section. Graphic that's shown here. And it does include new storm sewer, new relocated gas and overhead electric lines, and the sewer and water that is associated with serving this particular area, the TID 8 development area. The sewer and water has already been installed. As part of this project, intersections that will be improved with turn lanes and traffic signals include the frontage road, moving from west to east, the frontage road that serves the storage facility, Holy Hill Storage on the south, and the gas convenience store on the north. Traffic signals, the date of installation are to be determined, but turn lanes will be installed as part of the project. Gateway Crossing, the next major intersection to the east, again, signals the installation to be determined at a future date, although all the electrical work and other necessary support infrastructure will be put in place as part of this particular project. And then the Goldendale Road intersection. Traffic signals and turn lanes will be installed immediately as part of the initial reconstruction project. As shown on the graphic, the right-of-way generally is 120 feet in width. The project typically includes through the corridor 2 lanes in both directions, eastbound and westbound, 11 feet wide per lane. There's an 18-foot median. Throughout the project, it varies to accommodate turn lanes at the intersection areas, but generally 18 feet of median to be landscaped with turf. There's a 5-foot wide terrace that will be provided on the eastbound or the south side of the project between the reconstructed roadway and a 10-foot wide multi-use paved path. And on the north side, there will be a 10-foot wide terrace between the new traffic lanes and a 6-foot wide paved path. Again, the entire length from 41 to Goldendale Road. In terms of street lighting, it'll be a modified urban highway lighting plan in that the light poles themselves will be installed in the median area between the intersections and at the intersections. The poles are going to be 30 feet in height with 8-foot double mast extending over each eastbound and westbound lanes. The poles themselves will be a black aluminum material. The mounted height of the fixture is 34 feet. And again, the intersections that will be lit include the frontage road, Gateway Crossing, Gateway Court, and Goldendale Road. And between the intersections, light poles will be spaced approximately 215 feet apart. The light fixtures, again, mounted at a 34-foot mounted height. They are a cutoff fixture, a Cobra head type fixture, sort of a standard highway type light fixture, a 97 watts, 12,000 lumen fixture type with a 4,000 K color, which is sort of a natural white. It's not a bright white and it's not a warm white. It's sort of a neutral, a natural light. And the light levels themselves will vary from 0.3 to 2.5 foot candles on the surface, with an average foot candle lighting level of 1.2 foot candles across the corridor. This particular graphic shows what those lighting levels will be. And as you can tell in the middle part, as it gets sort of grayer, it's intended to show that between the 215-foot spacing, the light levels will reduce to a point that won't be black, but it's not going to be a continuous bright lit corridor. It's going to have sort of that sensation of going from a brighter to a not so bright area as you go across the corridor from the intersections through the individual fixture poles. So with that, that's the information I've got to present. Are there any questions or any comments?
Mr. Nillis.
Happy to see that there's a multi-use path involved in this design, and I'm assuming that's part of the overall connection report, or what, I forget what it was called. Was there any consideration to light the multi-use path?
At this point, no. There wasn't any to light the path specifically. The engineer, discussed with us the other day the idea that they wanted and recommended that the area be lit up like you ordinarily would for a highway, in a manner that would reach out and light up the paths and provide a more continuous lighting level across the corridor. However, with respect to the relative location, some of the concerns that have been raised in the past by residents, staff directed them to sort of, in a manner of speaking, tone it down a little. And that's effectively what this reflects, but not below a point that would provide a safe level of lighting for the intended purpose, which is a highway with posted travel speed of about 45 miles an hour.
Right. And I recognize that there'd be budgetary issues with that too. And I think it's fine without it. I just didn't know if that was part of the discussion.
Right. But you are correct. The multi-use path on the south side is part of the trail plan. That this is probably our first implementation of the trail plan that's been adopted as part of the most recent comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that we had been presented a couple meetings back.
If it would be decided later that perhaps the strengthening of those lights to accommodate a little bit more lighting on the path, could that be accomplished with the lights that they're installing, or would that require all new lighting?
It's my understanding that the fixture, the element would have to be replaced.
Okay, so it's not a program issue?
No, it's not. If you recall our discussion about Mequon Road, where I believe we were told that there would be the ability to adjust the lighting levels, through the technology and through controls in the cabinet and such. I do not believe that this is that a sophisticated a system, but if the lighting levels needed to be improved, that the fixture, the components would have to be replaced with a different fixture type.
Okay. Additional questions? Comments?
Have there been any comments or complaints from the residents about the existing lighting off the buildings?
Yes.
And do we anticipate this is just going to make that worse?
That's your anticipation.
I got lambasted at the joint meeting. People were complaining about it.
Well, or maybe it'll blend in and they won't even notice these.
I think it's fair to say that there was certainly the expectation that as the development took place with its associated lighting and the road improvement project, that there would be complaints that would be received concerning the lights.
Right.
I think we talked about this before. Is it just because there's light where there was none?
Yeah.
So there's nothing really you could do to mitigate.
The complaints that I heard at a meeting, joint meeting, was we can't see the stars anymore.
Right.
There's enough of a glow coming off of these buildings. We're no longer in a dark sky area.
Those buildings are not, are they, I've not been up there at night. So are the sides of the buildings illuminated?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so they're not gonna see that with these overhead lights, because they're gonna point down. So it may not be that much worse than what they're already seeing.
My experience with lighting has been because there was no light there before,
Well,
I'm annoyed because I see light. It's not, the foot candles are so far away, it's not the foot candles on my property. I used to see a black hole, now I see a white light.
Yeah, but
I don't
there
even
is,
see the bulb.
there is some light up near the interchange and across the bridge that lights up those exit and entrance ramps. And you'll have some additional lighting on that intersection of Goldendale and Holy Hill Road just for safety reasons and because it'll extend 500 feet.
Approximately, yes.
Okay, so you'll have some lights that way too, at least two.
But when you talk about illuminating Goldendale, the intersection of Goldendale and,
Freishton.
no, Holy Hill.
Yeah.
Goldendale and Holy Hill, that is gonna bring the lights right into their proximity.
Right.
So,
And according to the plan, there are 2 poles with fixtures east of the intersection that will be installed as part of this project as well. So
That
that,
makes sense. They're placed every 250 feet. We're going 500 feet in.
Mhm.
At least the math works.
as far as the street lighting somehow hiding the building lighting, I think it's just a combination. It'll just accumulate.
well, I didn't mean hide it. I meant that it wouldn't be as dramatic a step up.
True.
You should drive up there once.
Yeah, I
Bill.
know.
It's dramatic.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the lighting, washes the sides of the buildings and they're painted up, a lighter color. So it just sort of emphasizes
There are
the,
several times during the day, but that doesn't tell the story.
Mhm.
yeah, no, I drove by that area a few weeks ago at night and I was frankly kind of shocked to see the buildings there. They kind of blend into the background during the day, but at night they do stand out. So.
Okay, anything else on new business item C? All right, then we'll go on to new business item D, which is the 2050 Comprehensive Plan Update with discussion, a future land use, neighborhoods, districts, and corridors, and number 2, public input and community workshop schedule. Going to take over and start the discussion on this. We'll
Yes.
go to planner, Director Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At their February 7th meeting, the village board made it clear they discussed goals for 2022. And one of the priority goals was to complete and adopt the 2050 plan with a preliminary timeframe that was sort of tossed out for June of this year. And another priority goal, and I'm paraphrasing, is essentially to improve communication with and the dissemination of information to our property owners and our residents. And for our purposes, those two goals are our goals, and they go hand in hand. So as we talk further about that, I'd like to bring you up to date a little bit about, where we're at with the plan, and then talk a little bit more about where we need to go and what their next steps are, so we can start filling in some of these dates over the next number of months and strive to achieve what the village board goal is for this year, not only for them, but for us as well. So where are we with the 2050 plan? Well, to date, the plan components that have been completed include preparation of the neighborhood district and corridor future land use boundary map, the NDC preferred land use and density matrix, or the table that goes along with the map. We have 5 of the 8 chapters that have been drafted. They've been distributed to the Plan Commission for preliminary review and comment going back into October of last year. And those are still under review by staff, and changes are being made by staff and the consultant. In terms of public participation, we've completed the community survey. We've had 3 community conversation public workshops, if you will. The initial kickoff meeting, we had a park planning party that we were part of as part of that effort. We also had our virtual land use and community issue workshop that was sort of the precursor to and a lead into our social pinpoint webpage that was created specifically for the project. The social pinpoint website, it's still up and operational. When you walk into this room, you see a map, you pass a map. I don't know if you look at it, it sort of blends into the wallpaper now over the months, but basically directs people to our Germantown 2050 website, provide comments and get additional information. We had our village website question of the week surveys. We gathered some information, anecdotal at best, but some information that may very well be useful. We've had 3 GRAFE, our consultant GRAFE-led Plan Commission public meeting discussions, hands-on workshops, couple at tables here with maps when we were first discussing the NDC mapping. We've had, by my count, 5 staff-led Plan Commission public meeting discussions, much like the one we're having this evening. We've also had 3 staff-attended pop-up feedback type activities. Taste of Germantown, a national night out, and Oktoberfest. I know I was at one of those. Emily was at all 3 of them, where we attended those activities for the community and provided some information, and generally just had a presence there with respect to the 2050 planning project. In terms of the overall process, we're now at essentially the plan development stage. We need to be finalizing our land use plan alternatives and our goals and our map boundaries. The updating of the NDC maps and land use matrix is nearly complete. We'll need to be developing implementation strategies and recommendations. Those are something that the staff will be presenting to the Plan Commission for their review and consideration. And also developing a final draft of the plan document. And more importantly, conducting our 3rd of 3, actually what would be 4 of 4, if you count the park planning party, community conversation, meetings, public workshops. And that is pretty much where we're at right at this point. After that, we would have our plan review, public hearing and adoption stage, where we would be finalizing the final draft documents, advertising for a public hearing with a 30-day public hearing notice, having the plan commission conduct a public hearing, and then ultimately make a plan commission recommendation to the village board, and the village board conducting their own public hearing if they so choose to do, which is something we'll need to discuss with the board. And then finally, adoption of the 2050 plan by ordinance. So with that said, our next steps include, staff and Grafe completing our review and revision of the draft document chapters. I expect that to be conducted here in February and in March. Conducting our community conversation, number 4. And at this point, we could hold that as early as March, probably March 28th, which would ordinarily be our 4th Monday of the month, or some other date in that 4th week. Seems reasonable. Unless, of course, we want to hold optional or additional public meetings and workshops.
Mhm.
And this is something that came up again at the village board meeting the other night. And I believe the suggestion was we should have at least 2 additional public meetings to solicit feedback from residents. And that's where I think we kind of deviate on paths in terms of a timeline, and we really need to talk about how we want to implement that particular goal of the board. We need to talk about schedule. We need to talk about topics, format, location, what sort of notification and advertising we want to have for these optional meetings. I don't know if the board consider next community conversation as meeting one of those additional 2 public meetings.
I would.
Okay. So if that were the case, then we would need to start thinking about at least one additional meeting that's not already in the schedule, if you will. And if we had that meeting on March 28th or that 4th week in March, it's conceivable we could have the next meeting in either in the month of April, the 2nd week, or the 4th week of April, depending upon how much time might be needed in between. And I think it all comes down to ultimately what sort of a topic. What do we want to discuss at this additional public meeting?
I think that at that point, it's along a further lines of finality or close to finality. So you're presenting it as it is and in the direction that it's going. And if there's any questions about, any of the areas, whether they're neighborhood districts or any of the neighborhoods themselves in regards to whether they be the neighborhood or the district in regards to what's allowable, what's not allowable. I think those questions could be handled at that meeting, but I think where it's really going to come to head and where this open discussion and most of the changes are going to occur are in the rural preservation district and what we're proposing or possibly proposing in changes of allowable buildable acreage in that area and how it works. I think that's going to be the forefront of the discussion. A lot of these other areas that are to the south are, we're not changing that much really. And, it's pretty well set in our heavy urban areas. The only other major change that could occur would be in what's considered the village center district and some of the zoning or changes in zoning that could happen in that area to help facilitate some additional development or different development in the downtown area. But I think the biggest and probably the forefront of the discussion really is going to be that rural preservation district and how it finally breaks out. I think that is where your major debate point is.
I agree. I had similar train of thought. It was one of two approaches. Hold our community conversation, number 3, number 4, which is intended to be a presentation by Grafe,
Mhm.
consultant, of the overall plan as it stands with regard to particularly land use and the policies laid out in the neighborhood district and corridor maps and the land use matrix.
And that's on the 28th of March?
Well, that
Or-
that would be the earliest it could be.
Mhm.
Or the other approach would be to identify a particular topic and hold that first before we ultimately go to
Ah.
the community conversation.
Mhm.
So the approach that you mentioned, the first one, is sort of a, let's let people know where we're at and get some feedback that might point out some issues or topics that we're not aware of. Or like you pointed out, we sort of know what the topics are going to be: rural preservation and the village center district.
I like that thought process because then it shows what I think is the elephant in the room, and it gets those discussions out there of people that have concerns or own property in that area and what they would like to see Germantown do in what it's considered as its rural preservation area, or what we're showing it is to be, and how, their perception of wanting a rural feel and making sure that it's kept as open lands. And with not Ehlers, but with the help of the consultant, they can kind of show how that really needs to be. It's not 5-acre parcels that are busted up so that in 30, 40 years from now, you have just a bunch of neighborhoods of 5-acre parcels that don't give the openness or present the openness that maybe a conservation neighborhood would, or something that would have a larger parcel division for anybody that would want to build a home in that area. I mean, what we've heard over and over again in a lot of the surveys since I've been on the board and seen surveys is we like the rural part of Germantown. We want Germantown to still have that rural aspect to it. We're built out to the south, so you're not going to be knocking down buildings to give more rural aspect. Where you're going to maintain it and where you're going to continue to protect it is in the area that we're showing in that upper green corridor. And I think that's probably the most discussion point, or the point that will have the most discussion to it. And if we tackle that first and present it first as this is what we're thinking about, or this is how we think it works, and then we get that input, then when Grave comes and does their full presentation, we have a better kind of a better feeling of how it's going to be, rather than opening it up at that time to a bunch of changes, and now we're trying to punch those in the last 8 weeks.
And I think the timing is important to consider because, very often we, for example, hold a public hearing the same time we're taking action.
Mhm.
There's this perception that somehow the decision's already been made and the public hearing and the comments that are provided at the same meeting, don't really carry any weight and they're not given much consideration.
Mhm.
In a similar way, if we're having our community conversation, which is intended to present, the status of where we're at, almost sort of a preliminary, final, policy presentation, sort of gives the impression that, well, we haven't thought about and given enough consideration to the topic of rural preservation. And we have, but we know we probably need to do more.
Right.
So if we do hold the additional public meeting or workshop first, do that in March, you want it to be focused on the rural preservation district? And if so, then the question is, what kind of format should we have? How should we advertise? I mean, one thought that I had was we've already developed this is a list of property owners in the green area that own, I forget what it is, 10 acres or larger,
Mhm.
that we could, specifically send an invitation to, since those are the property owners who are directly impacted by whatever policy decisions are made for the green area. And then just advertise as we normally would through social media, our EMC board out front, and our website to anybody else, and not specifically invite everybody in the village.
Well, I agree with the property owners getting a mailing, absolutely, so that they, what you can't, what can't be said is that we didn't know. So everybody is showing respect to those property owners to say, we're going to be discussing an area that involves you directly, and we'd like your input too. And it's part of the 2050 plan, and we'll present, where we're at with that now and what we're thinking, and we're looking for your input of what you feel about that. So that I like, but at the same time, it really kind of impacts the rest of the residents too, because of the surveys that we've had. It's always been a strong outcome. It's always been a comment of some kind from most people to say that we want to maintain that rural feel. And it has an impact in regards to, parks and being able to drive out into that area and have a more of an openness to it. Even if you live on the urban side, you can still go out to Dinesville or whatever and still get that, the rural feel of what Germantown is. And I think that's one of the things that really makes us unique also as a village. We are very distinctly different from one side to the other. And some people kind of like that difference. You've got all the amenities on your very urban side, but at the same time, I can drive 10 minutes in almost any direction and be out in the country. And, I can go out to a country setting, or I can go out to a restaurant that's more based on a country setting type of thing. And that's why I want to move out of, more of a strongly urban area, like, whether it be Brookfield or Milwaukee or Wauwatosa or whatever. I mean, which is more urbanized overall.
How
No,
have,
I agree with you. Everybody has a say, or should have a say,
Right.
because there are positions that people may take that are unexpected. You may expect everybody who owns property in the green to want to preserve that.
Maybe.
When I first came here, I was surprised to see that the village had changed its policy not too long before I came here, from a 20-acre minimum parcel size to 5-acre in effectively north of Freistadt Road.
Mhm.
And that policy alone doesn't necessarily scream, rural preservation. It sort of goes in the opposite direction. Um, and, looking back at some of the meeting minutes and discussions that were had, a lot of the property owners in the green were advocating for smaller lot size and that sort of higher density. So yes, you may find positions that people take in both in the green and out of the green, North Village, South Village, who have positions that may be surprising and
But-
are
but I-
worthy to consider.
But I like the idea of an individual letter to those owners. And then at the same time, everything else is then, is advertised in the normal fashion of how we get our information out. I think, when did the water bills go out? When would that March water bill go out? Why, you guys work in the village, you don't know?
We've asked somebody from the
But you would think it would be before March 28th, right? Okay, because it would be the first quarter. I would just put a blurb in there so that everybody else that receives, that has property ownership within the village, they would then receive that information to say, on this date, we are going to, discuss mostly the rural preservation district, but it's also open to other questions that people might have. But we're really wanting to present, and try to get a feel for where we want to go with this. We have an idea, but we want that input.
just so you understand, that mailing is not going out to anybody in the green. We don't have water and sewer.
That's,
We
well,
don't care.
that's why they're getting, everybody that has property ownership in that area,
They're
that's
getting
why
it
they're
separate.
getting it
Okay.
separate, because they have that tie.
Yeah.
Everybody else that wants input or has participated in the surveys in the urban area that are on the sewer and water, they also have that opportunity to come and talk about why they like Germantown in the way that it has that rural feel in that area. But right, absolutely, we're going directly to them,
Yeah.
but we're also discerning information for all.
Okay. So you're doing both.
Right.
Okay. How's the turnout been to these listening sessions, engagement sessions? We have these rooms packed?
No.
What do we
Yes,
get?
when you will.
5, 10 people?
Well,
Because I'm still hearing, I never knew. I never heard. When are the meetings?
The one for recreation and parks, that one was participated
we've sent out
pretty well.
this is one of two. Well, you've got the other one, and I think everyone has a copy of the postcards that we've sent out before. One for the community survey, and one for leading up to our virtual workshop in March of last year,
COVID killer.
sort of the precursor to the social pinpoint. It's hard to say, but the turnout isn't great.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's just not great. And if we sent these out, I think in both cases, we sent them out to every property owner. And it was very expensive.
Mhm.
It was time consuming and expensive, roughly $4,500 to $5,000 a pop to send out a nice postcard in the manner that we did. And that didn't really include postage so much as it was we had the cards printed up, gave them to the post office, and their carriers would take a stack, and when they would walk around, they would hand them out with, one with every mail delivery.
Yeah.
In pretty much the north part of the village for, I don't say absent property owners, but, vacant property owners who live in or outside of the village, they received a direct mail. So yeah, we didn't get a really good bang for the buck, so to speak, out of the postcards.
Hmm.
Survey, we had a good turnout for, but we advertised that in other means as well.
I was out on the pinpoint map thing the other day. You're getting some responses there.
There's some, but there's nothing really fresh.
I think we need to start talking in words of, it's time to wrap, we're wrapping it up. We're looking to present, we're looking to approve. And that way, if some people have been if they've been holding back, I don't know, maybe they have, or, COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And for a while there in 2020 and 2021, nobody wanted to get in a room with 8 people that they didn't know. And a lot of that's changed now, with the vaccine and with some of the mask mandates that are either there or not there, depending on where you are. But I think that thought process has changed, and people are more willing to participate in something than they were back in its beginnings. So we start now talking along the lines of, we need to get this completed, we have to get this presented, we have to get it. We have to go through public hearings, but at the same time, there's still some discussion points that we need input on. And I think the biggest one for me is this one, because it maps out. And even if you look at the history of the last 2020 plan, this was an issue. This went through several reiterations before they came up and finally decided on that 5-acre, north of Freistadt Road. You're going to get more participation here because the people that own larger tracts of land have an idea, and they want to make sure that their idea and their plan can still happen, and that we're not going to somehow change it where now that doesn't occur.
I also want to think you're going to get a lot of turnout on the Holy Hill Gateway District. Where's the edge of, where's the end of industrial development? How do you transition back into farmland? There were a lot of people.
In a sense.
Your Isabel Farms, there's less people that live out there, but they've been vocal. But I think there's going to be, I think those are the two areas. Rural preservation and Holy Hill Road.
Do you want to hold a separate public meeting just for the Holy Hill Gateway area? Or you want to kind of split the difference on this one for rural preservation and tie in its interface with the yellow and the purple areas in some way?
I just think you got to be prepared to talk about it when you have a meeting.
Okay.
It kind of goes hand in hand in regards to its transition, and how we've talked about feathering of density and development in that area, or even the single family, or there's been loose discussion of multifamily as well for employee support or in order to, to supply employees to the area. So it all goes hand in hand. But I really, I think those two areas or anything, call it north of Freistadt, is really what's going to be your hard discussion lines.
Yeah, those two areas.
Because everything else is set. And in this village center district, people are interested. But until you have something else as to what that is, and until the 2050 land use plan is finalized and adopted, then you can start going into, what that vision of the village center district can be and what type of zoning alternatives could happen there to help drive development.
With respect to the rural preservation public workshop, what type of a format do you think would work best? Would you want some sort of a information station like we did all those years ago with regard to Main Street? Sort of a charrette style workshop where we have an initial, short presentation, people break off into work groups, tackle a particular issue or problem, or, present them with some decision making or just gather opinions as a small group, then come back together, um, or just a typical public hearing style. We sit up here, we sit out there, we give some sort of presentation of what we're thinking about, and they come up and tell us what they think.
I think, and this is my opinion, everybody else can put in however you would like it to be or how you vision it, but I like the idea of, a lot of people are going to come in with questions or not a good basis of information, because maybe they've touched the website, but they kind of think what it is or what the 2050 plan is, but not really a good idea. So I like the idea of presenting it out to say, in this area, this is what we've been thinking, in this area, this is what we've been thinking, and kind of present that information out. Then if there's questions or input, let's hear them. For those that are either directly involved by, land ownership, or those that want to, add something to it because of residency. And then at the end, I would break it out because there are some people that are not going to want to talk in a large group. And at the end, I would, slot some time to where you can have your individuals, and that's when you're going to get more of that personal one-on-one from somebody that might be intimately directed and affected by it, but isn't as willing to come forward in a group of 5, 10, or 15 people.
One of the criticisms that we received, or constructive feedback following our virtual workshop, was that way that it had been presented, and the people would go to the website, individually. There was no opportunity for feedback between individuals or property owners, and some owners might be swayed by the discussion of another. And so the suggestion was that we would benefit more from having sort of a charrette style session where people could break off into small groups, feel a little bit more comfortable talking, and then, appoint the spokesperson from the table who might present ideas to the overall group.
I'd be fine with that too, if you wanted to throw the small groups in the middle and then have the final question and answer at the end. That, I think that, in whatever order it wants, you think it works best. I mean, at least then you have more of a opportunity to get some good notes, rather than I remember this person saying, or I remember that person saying. Even though you have some of that, at the end you would have something that Lori can write down into the minutes. That's more
Right.
more firm and organized.
That was the style of what we did that long weekend with the consultant hired by the federal government under the Brownfield grant to do the connection study for the this Village Center District, Main Street area. We had that where we were a large group, sat around a very large table. A little more specific, I think we reached out and invited specific individuals. And then we broke off into little groups and had discussions and came back together. And it was very fruitful. And in that same way, we may be able to present a couple of scenarios, if you will, like we're going to talk now about the interface between the Holy Hill Gateway and the rural preservation area. And what would you think about this? The village gets presented with a development proposal for something that, seemingly many people would like to see come here, but yet it's going to locate in an area just east of our Holy Hill corridor area. What should the village do? Or something along those lines where we present a sort of a hypothetical scenario, try and solicit some kind of response. I'm grasping here, but
What if you had, and maybe it's where you're going, I'm not really sure, but we talked a little bit about having a meeting that really focused on the green area in the north, okay? But we also have some need for some meetings about the Holy Hill area. And we also have another area where there's some development coming along over in Amy Bell, Willow Creek area over there. Would it be advantageous to have meetings that focused on those three things? Because really, like me over in Spazza, nothing's gonna, like we said, nothing's gonna change there. But I'm still interested overall in the village. So 3 smaller meetings, no, not smaller, focused meetings, and then 1 overall one. What about something like that?
that's certainly possible. That is an area of concern. Some might say it's unfortunate, but we've got a situation here where the tail is kind of wagging the dog. We've got developers who are interested in moving forward in that particular area to the point where they're already out there talking to property owners and presenting conceptual plans. And those owners turn around and call us and want to know is this true? Is this really going on? And we don't have anything that's been presented in any sort of a public forum at this point. And it's been discussed sort of more hypothetical, only in an effort to try and keep up with the development pressure. And that's just going to keep going. In fact, it's my understanding that we're going to be presented with some concept plans for actual development layout for that particular area, the county line at Lannon Road intersection area that we can't ignore, and we can't say, well, wait until May after we get through this workshop. So that may be a workshop in and of itself in the context of it being an actual, information meeting for a specific development proposal. Maybe a slightly different way of getting the same information. That may very well be in
I just,
March.
in my neighborhood, I mean, it's a close-knit group. There's about 18 houses. I get a lot of telephone calls simply because I'm on the plan commission. In fact, I got right taped to my table. Okay, here's your 2 trustees' phone numbers, okay? I'm on the plan commission. I don't really set policy as such, but just things that I shouldn't say that the trustee can have a conversation with on. But at the same time, I get a feel for what they're thinking. And there's a real feeling in this group of 18 people or so that nobody's talking to them about the water system. That's a big deal with all of them. Here's this 20 people or 20 houses, 18 houses in Spazlin area talking about what's going on with the Richfield and Germantown water system. And they say this was all done in secret. I said, no, it wasn't. I mean, I'm a citizen just like you, and I knew they had a group meeting between the two. It was in the Germantown, tabloid press at the very least. But that's still the way people think, that something's being hidden from them. And geez, just think about the 2050 plan. If they think the water program's hidden from them.
Well, and that was even provided with a big venue so that we expected a larger turnout. And you got 30?
Well, I know.
Which we
and
could have
that's
had
the
right
other
here.
thing. You say, okay, did you go to that meeting? Well, no, I said, I don't know. My feeling is if you didn't go, then you weren't that interested. Well, then they come, well, I didn't know about it. Well, yes, they did. Okay. Or they had the opportunity to look. I don't know. I don't know what we do to conquer that problem.
And that is the problem, is how do you get people how do we inform them? How do you get them to show up and speak? Because the part of the issue with the group, you raised our water bills to pay for Richfield. No, Richfield has nothing
That's
to do
an
with it.
unfortunate timing issue.
Yeah, so it's just,
I know, I heard
people
that.
are misinformed, and how do you get How do you get them to come here, get the information and communicate?
We raised the water bills to pay for the system because it wasn't paying for itself.
What was that? There was a comment, there was, that came up, comment came up. And I said, I don't know, I'm just an old manufacturing guy, but I kind of think volume eventually saves you some money. So don't you want the more people you can get on there? Once you've settled the capital issues of getting against, oh no, that's just a fat answer from the village.
Well,
So
So I sympathize with you. There's no way to answer the question.
anybody else with other input on what you'd like to see for meetings or how you'd like to see them?
I guess I would just like to know if Grafe has any suggestions or if you talk to them about any.
at this point, they're looking at us to identify
Yeah, okay.
topics.
But
They're
as far as a
interested and anxious to move forward with the next community workshop, the next thing on their list.
Yeah.
And I've let them know, we've let them know since last fall that there's been this idea that we needed more public meetings and workshops to solicit additional feedback, even though the attempts so far have been lukewarm at best in terms of success.
Right, in the age of COVID. I mean, that's really where we're going through, where this, where you were going to have most of the meetings or some of those listening sessions. It was high tide for COVID and a lot of people were in a lockdown.
And I agree. That's why
We're looking at some additional meetings now so that those that want to or feel that they have lost that opportunity, they can still come forward and do so.
Which is kind of an interesting segue into, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
the location. And we talked about the Richfield water utility extension topic came up. It was scheduled before the high school PAC, the Performing Arts Center. 30 people attended. I frankly didn't know we counted that many. Does that include the village and the village trustees from both?
I think it
villages?
included everybody.
Okay, so, 7 or 8 on each side, that's half the attendees were officials who were expected to be there in the first place. So it's difficult. And you're right, we could have held it right in this room, which sort of, raises the issue, where should we go with these additional meetings? We've been told the library, the community room, they're down to the one larger room, which frankly provides about as much room as we have here. Here we have the ability, technology-wise, if we do it right, we could have the meetings on WebEx, reach out further to people who might want to just at least listen in, if not necessarily participate. But they could do that as well. I think the technology can support it. With a few Band-Aids and some duct tape, we'll get through that.
Yeah, I think we start here. And if we fill this room, then we know on the next meeting that it needs to be a different venue when it's the whole plan.
It was a pretty good couple of meetings we had here. We had some tables set up out here.
We've had some good listening sessions here before. When we were looking at some other things years ago, we had a really strong listening session here with boards and different tables set up. I thought it was very well attended. And there was a lot of good activity and a lot of good discussions that came out of it. I've seen them hit and miss. I've seen good ones even come out of the Department of Transportation when they've had some of theirs over at the library where there's been strong turnout, and others where I've seen there's been nobody.
Kind of a clean venue. It's just a big room. You can do whatever you want.
But
Right, this is the only limitation.
well, but what's good about this is what Jeff was saying is that it allows us more avenues of technology and presentation, and also the ability to disperse it out to more people.
Make a suggestion on the venue though. There are months where we were kind of separated. There'll only be a few of us here. I wasn't here a lot of those months. We had a few meetings for other purposes on Zoom, and then we had WebEx in this room. I got to tell you, Zoom is like infinitely better than dealing with WebEx. Am I the only one that notices that?
No, I would agree.
There was nights where I
WebEx
couldn't,
and
if I
Zoom.
wanted to ask a question, I couldn't break in. But I don't know.
No,
Now Zoom had to earn the reputation they've got now. They were terrible in the beginning, but I do multiple Zoom meetings a week. I do, Microsoft Teams. That's about as good. But every time it's WebEx, it's like, oh my, this is going to be a mess. And it always is.
I don't know what to say.
I don't know if you can even do that. I mean, it's just a,
I, I don't know why we're on, I mean, why are we on one versus the other? That I don't have an answer.
what are we've had several Zoom meetings. Is that when Grafe does the meeting or something, or?
Yeah.
Rafe, they like to use Microsoft Teams.
Well, that's a real move to that, and it works very well.
Sure. Even Google Meetings, or video
I've been-
conferencing works pretty
they
well.
work well, but I don't know.
That's what we use strictly where I work.
I don't know what our flexibility is. I don't know what we're tied into, if anything, contractually or financially.
That's a question for Steve. I mean, one versus the other, we want to work with the best avenue going forward. But go ahead.
When was the 2050 plan originally scheduled to be completed sans COVID? Was it like last year?
We're more than a year and a half, closer to 2 years behind.
I just think that like to re-engage the community, you almost need like a clearing meeting or something. Here's where we are, right? And then
I-
bring up the topics.
Right, and I think that can be had in and we were kind of talking in that direction to begin with, but then Jeff brought up a good point of wouldn't it be better to discuss the rule preservation before the full presentation? Because if you do it after, then you're kind of, you know, maybe it might impact some other areas based on what changes. And if we tackle the what we think is the biggest issue, which is the Holy Hill Gateway District, or if you want to go down to Land and County Line, and the rural preservation, I think those are the three biggest discussion points, because everything else is pretty well locked in. I mean, there's some free lands as you go down to the, the very southeast corner. But again, they're also limited with wetlands and topography as to what can and can't go in those areas. So I think I like the idea of going and attacking this first for input and then presenting it. And I agree, present it like, here it is. Here is everything. And now it's open to discussion. And there'll also be public hearings after that, two, is what you're saying, one in Plan Commission and one at Village Hall. So that really then drives four more opportunities for input.
Just, in terms of social psychology, you almost need to stay, there's like 7 ways you can influence people. One is there's a deadline. We're cooking down on this thing. We need your input now. Otherwise, it's going to be, there'll be multiple plans, whatever. We're running out of time. You see that in every TV show, whatever. They got to run up a deadline, right?
If you order now, you get 2 for the price.
So,
And that's a little countdown clock. The next 30 seconds, order now.
So in terms of additional public meetings, right now we're focused on one to address the rural preservation area or district. And to the extent that we can tie in the Holy Hill Road corridor, Gateway corridor interface with that.
I think it just will.
But I've also heard Village Center. I've heard Lannon at County Line Road.
I think you can open up, you could, if you wanted to do a workshop on everyone. I mean, really, if you wanted to get into it. But I think the biggest area and this is my opinion, is north of Freistadt. If at the main meeting where we present it all, you can hammer out these smaller discussion points of down on Land and County Line. You could highlight it as an area of next development so that it helps drive some conversation to it. You could highlight the opposite corner of that southeast corner that's got some areas of opportunity of development along Wasaki and Donjas Bay and 145. There's opportunities still there. But to go back to the largest land mass of discussion, and the one that we hear the most on any survey, is this rural area. how do we want to handle it going forward? Do we still want to bust it down into 5-acre lots? Or if you truly want a rural feel, a rural appeal, something that goes out and shows the land in, you know, in its fullest, then you have to look at something else. And these are ways in regards to what, you know, what they would come forward with of how people are doing this. And it's not us saying it, it's the consultants saying, this is what we're seeing. This is other areas that we see how this works and how they maintain or keep that rural look by working the neighborhoods this way or allowing only this much development within 20 acres. And it's not us saying it for whatever purpose that people might think we have to say it for. No, but it's our consultant. This is what we ask them to do for us. Now, before Jan types her fingers bloody here, we'll give her an opportunity to make a comment. Jan, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, President Walter. I think that more discussion needs to be made only because there has been such a large gap. It's like we started the 2050 plan, it stopped because of COVID and other things. Now we're trying to get feedback. I know rural is very important, but there are other areas that are important as well. The whole village has opinions, and I agree. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do to get people out. But if we have a schedule, an actual schedule for when you're going to have a main meeting, breakout sessions, maybe you're going to hold a rural meeting and then a Lannon and county line development meeting at some other time. But if you have a strategic plan and timeline that can be posted now on the website and use other different types of social media, you'll get a better response. And I mean, we're doing a strategic plan at the library community center to wrap our arms around what the community needs. And just last Friday, we had a community conversation right there in the village board meeting because the library community center meeting rooms were taken up. They were booked. So, you know, we had to kind of move around. But anyway, 12 people were invited. It was by invitation only. We have a company called Wills that's helping us do the strategic plan. We did a survey last month. The deadline was the 7th of February. Wills, the company for the strategic plan, was looking for 600. We got 1,000 responses for a survey. It was not long, but we reached out and we got we put together a list of people that are in our database. And so the village has the database, yes, of the water sewer people, but we don't necessarily, I'm not aware of a database for those people in the rural area. So I
Property tax.
agree. Yeah, so I agree that they should be mailed and heard, you know, also. And I like the idea of having smaller community, you know, smaller. If you want to talk about Lannon and County Line Road, when you have developers coming out and going to the residents and they're pressuring us, why would we continue to develop if we don't have our 2050 plan? Our 2050 plan is like our strategic plan. It's just my opinion. But I think that the Landon Road, the Holy Hill, some of those other areas and they need the rural area, they need to be heard. But I suspect because we had such low turnout even on this social pinpoint, which I'm not sure why it wasn't called the 2050 plan to click on. So I, I find some things very difficult or not intuitive to find on our website. So I think we need to reach out to all the residents, give them a timeline, let them know that they can show up. We've got the new sign outside the village hall. We can advertise. So we have a few more venues, if you will. And Grafe should be able to set up the same type of conversation that they did on Zoom before. And maybe we'll get more than 23 people. So those are just things to think about. Got some suggestions. We, survey monkeys, things like that. So I think we just need to investigate a little bit more, and be mindful of the timeline. You got April is election and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Mhm.
Could we do something at the 4th of July? If you wanted to have a lot of people coming to an event and have a little area in the fire station or something like that, they could get online and have it interactive, let them
We'd
play
like to
on the
get it
computer.
wrapped up before then, if we could.
Well, yeah,
But to
but
answer your question on, why do we keep developing if we don't have a 2050 plan? You always fall back to the 2020 plan. You have the 2020 plan to follow until you approve the next land use plan, which would be the 2050 plan. So there is still a framework for development that's been approved. Because that kind of answers your question, I think, that you had in the beginning. Why do we continue to develop if we haven't have this plan approved? We follow then the 2020 plan.
Right, and in this case, what we're being presented with from developers is a plan that arguably is consistent with what the current plan is for that area, which
That's
is,
all they have.
which is industrial and mixed-use commercial. The only element we've talked about to date that may be slightly different is the introduction of some higher density residential.
yes, but my concern is that along county line, we have vacant strip malls.
Correct.
And it would be nice to fill up instead of going from the east end to the west end, try to, I mean, it looks like a ghost town. That's my concern. I'm very concerned about that.
Right, but it also shows you the limits of what commercial can do in that area. The land in County Line Road area is not strong commercial. It's more a business park and residential with one component of commercial, which could be a gas station on that corner, but it does not stretch commercial out to that area. And I agree with you that we've seen the limits of commercial on County Line west of Appleton Avenue. It kind of stops at Aldi's. And actually a little bit before that because Pier 1 is empty.
Yeah.
And anything beyond that struggles. So, that can be a discussion of redevelopment and a lot that other communities are seeing and working with too as well. Menominee Falls has done a little bit better job with their downtown area, making it a walking community, but they will struggle with components of Appleton Avenue and redeveloping that. As their commercial corridor stretched out, I think a little bit too far for them. And right now, only the ends are what I would consider active and fruitful for them. That's an opinion. I appreciate that, Trustee Miller.
So I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
So if we're looking at to lay out a plan, which I think is a good idea, and a schedule of sorts, I think the 328 date is a good one for the rural preservation in the Holy Hill area of a discussion. I think we're really targeting this, but I think this will be encompassed because it goes together, and it's just how one impacts the other. The next the next date that I would look at would be 425, more as an overall discussion of
Whatever you want to talk about, come in and talk about it.
Well, we could do that and you could have ad hoc and a bunch of people will come forward. But what I would like to do is, again, they could present, Grafe could present, an overview of each of the different neighborhoods and districts. And then we could have kind of a breakout of, and I don't want one for everyone, but you could break it into 5 areas or 6 areas and group them. And then come back at the end, after we have that discussion, because I like that what that does is it generates thought, it generates questions. You get a lot of other input from other people and you're going, I didn't think about that. And then somebody else is going, I kind of agree. That changes what I came here to talk about. So I like that idea, and then come forward and handle those questions towards the end. And that way, everybody feels that they've had opportunity to talk if they don't want to talk in a meeting setting. And then at the same time, they can have those that want to, based on their own personal input or their own personal view of what's needed because of what they own or where their house is in that area. They can present that information to us as well. Then I would look at public hearings. I'm just picking dates so you guys can say yay or nay, but, maybe the public hearing for the plan commission could be the 9th, and for the village board, it could be the 6th, and then we could take that information and then put it on an agenda for approval on the 20th of June. So I got like plan commission, public hearing on May 9th. I've got June village board public hearing on June 6th, and then present for approval, because then you take input from that and then kind of put it into whatever needs to be tweaked or changed or different language, and put it out for approval then on the 20th. That's just a schedule, looking at a calendar that I pick some dates of. Tell me I'm full of it if you like. It's your opportunity.
Wait till after the meeting. to tell you that. No, I think those are fine dates.
And it could change. I mean, it could slag out based on some of our input. But if we're looking for one of our goals to be to finally get this in a place by June, this helps do that. And then it also gives opportunity for more input. Mr. Nils.
Maybe I missed it earlier, but what was the reason for targeting June?
June was because it gave us 6 months to help finish it up. We've been going on it for almost 2 years.
Yeah, no,
And it gave us a good 6-month program, so it gives you enough time to where it doesn't look like you're rushing it through, but at the same time you're trying to sunset it within this year, so that then it can other things can then move from that, because once it's approved, other things will come forth, and I keep pointing to the Village Center District because there's opportunity there, and there's opportunity there now.
Right.
And I don't want to see another year go by, because then, some of these other areas of opportunity could be gone.
I agree. I don't want it to drag out. I mean, time is money and all that, but I guess I also don't want it to be rushed. So I guess I would ask Jeff and staff, is that going to be rushed? Or do you think we can get a quality product in that time frame?
I'd certainly have to discuss with Craig, see what sort of time frame they can gear up for.
Mhm.
And if he feels it's August for whatever reason, based on what we're asking him to be as our consultant, then there's opportunity for input at that 4th of July event, like Jan was talking about. But I think you need to start with some sort of rough plan, and then let's work it from there.
That makes sense to me.
Do we go over your dates real quick? Because
Sure.
we're throwing out numbers without me understanding which months we're talking
Well,
about.
328 is when we're talking about rural preservation in the Holy Hill area. 425 is more of an overall
That would be our
presentation.
community conversation that's already in the schedule,
Right.
the overall presentation by Grafe.
But then I would also have the opportunity to break it out into individuals, and I'm not looking for whatever number there's there, call it 16. I would break it into fifths, or, group it into sixths, into 6 different areas that you could spread out, in the corners and on the sides for discussion. So maybe over there you got rural preservation and Dinesville and Rockfield, and over here you've got Holy Hill and Isabel Farms and Woodside and Freistadt, and just kind of group them together to what makes sense. And then come back and then have public input into to other people that want to to have a say or an opportunity to talk in front of, a group, rather than the breakout allows those that don't feel comfortable with that, at least to get opportunity to get heard.
And they have a conversation as opposed to Robert's rules.
Right. And I think we should put a podium right there for that one.
Wherever you want to go.
I like, I like the opportunity to present this way than this way. I think that they're here to present to us and not, not to an audience. And then I had public hearing tentatively selected for for Plan Commission on May 9th and for Village Board on June 6th. And then approval before Village Board on June 20th. Just as a starting schedule. And it might be too tight, but it needs to start somewhere. And Grateful let us know based on their recommendation and their experience.
One of my thoughts is, and we don't have to change anything at this point because we're going to talk about it, but having a public hearing date before the Plan Commission separate from the date that the Plan Commission would make their formal recommendation to the board,
Mm-hmm.
so that we would avoid the, having to make a recommendation the same night that we're soliciting public feedback. If there's, because we may very well hear something that is enough to cause us to call a slight timeout, make some changes, and then bring it back before the Plan Commission makes a final recommendation to the board. We can talk about that.
Right. You could slide that back to the 25th and then have it on for Plan Commission on the 9th. April 25th for public hearing, and then have it before the Plan Commission for recommendation on May 9th.
We've got the community conversation number 4 on April 25th.
Oh, that's right. All right, well, then you could push it forward.
Something out, and we can talk about it again in our meeting next March.
Okay.
But we do know that Rural Preservation District Public Workshop, or whatever we're going to end up calling it, we're shooting for March 28th.
Mhm. Yeah.
In this room,
Mhm.
and likely try and do some sort of a charrette-style breakout group session. As far as advertising, the notion was to send out a specific invitation, either by like a letter or a postcard, to our rural preservation area property owners and other means of advertising for everyone else, which may include the water bill, if we can get that.
Mhm.
Certainly the social media, the website, and the Village Hall message board.
All right.
And just a reminder, that week before is spring break. So if you're going to get the word out, make sure that it's, people are around to get it. And, if people are still traveling or whatever that Monday, it might affect attendance a little bit.
On the 3/28?
Yeah, the spring break is that week before.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have to start
Oh, well, then
Now-
we're doing that on purpose.
taking into account those.
I didn't even know that.
restrictions.
Okay. Good.
I think we're good.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else in regards to new business item D?
I had one thing I wanted to ask Emily if she could give us a brief update. A couple meetings back, we talked about some assembly bills were presented dealing with housing.
Mm-hmm.
And Emily's got some information. They bring us up to date on where those bills stand. If you recall, one of them was AB 605 had to deal with spending ARPA money, requiring communities to spend a certain amount of their ARPA money on housing related items, workforce housing, and the other one had to deal with multifamily zoning. So
So Assembly Bill 506, which provided, I guess, instructions for the use of ARPA funds, something like 10% or $1 million of ARPA funds would need to be spent on workforce housing related expenditures. That has gone from the Assembly to the the Senate, but has not been sent to the committee yet. So it's basically in the same spot it was when we talked about it in November.
Okay.
Assembly Bill 608 has been sent to the Senate and is also now Senate Bill 840. This was sent to the Committee on Housing, Commerce, and Trade, who held a public hearing on February 3rd. The committee needs to take a vote on the bill to send their recommendation back to the Senate for a final vote. So the committee still needs to vote and provide recommendation back to the full Senate. That is, I apologize, 608 was the one to require multifamily district that allows up or 16 units per acre or more, and requires municipalities to allow multifamily 16 units per acre or greater in all commercial districts. So they held up, the committee held a public hearing on the 3rd, and they still need to make a recommendation vote.
Does any of our representatives sit on that committee?
I do not know.
Okay.
Should we find that out and pass that along?
Yeah, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, those are significant, especially 608.
Yeah.
If we have to come up with a multifamily district that allows 16 units per acre and expand all of our commercial districts to allow 16 units per acre, it's a kind of a game changer in terms of our zoning code and our overall density allowance for residential development, which, depending upon which side of the table you're on, is good or bad.
Right. But it also allows opportunity for those areas that show vacancy for long periods of time for
Right.
redevelopment.
We talk about, for example, the thing Jan Miller brought up about the vacant commercial areas, along County Line Road. Right now, we don't have anything that would allow that short of creating a planned development district. So could very well be a good opportunity. I guess for me, the downside is the mandate of a specific amount or type of
Yeah.
density.
Personal opinion is it's overreach. Again, to tell me how we need to use our land and in what purpose from dollars that come from a federal government. Now the state tells us how we're supposed to spend it. To me, that's an overreach. I mean, there's already guidelines out there, but to say that you must do this and it has to be in this manner, I'm more for local government control on those types of issues. That's my opinion. Anything else on new business items? Any announcements? No announcements? All right, then we can be adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night. Thank you.